Hello guys, welcome to my channel and let's go through. So we are currently doing an hands-on for CPI integrations where we are going through all the activities that we have, all the adapter details within the steps in an integration process. So let's now talk about all the adapter types we have currently. Like adapters are basically like when we are connecting sender and the receiver, there are multiple sender connectivity and receiver connectivity types that we can use, and these are pre-populated. We just need to do a configuration and we are ready to use them, such as Ariba, AS4, FTP, HTTPS, IDOC, mail, OData, SFTP, SOAP, SuccessFactor, all those options are already there. So now just go through all the receiver and sender related connectivity details and what are the configurations as part of it. So here I have created few integration flows for you to go through, and let's start with firstly with SOAP as an activity. So for now, let me delete this path and recreate it for you. Once I reconnect with the start event, you get all these options here listed, and here I select SOAP RM. So first of all, in SOAP this is SAP RM property. We can configure that as like SOAP adapters are basically enables the message exchange between web service providers and web service consumers via SAP CI. So SOAP RM is used for asynchronous web service communication. Here when you click on connection details, you have address and URL to WSDL. That basically like address is an endpoint path where CI listens the incoming request, and the URL to WSDL is where you can define the URL. You can click and select the resources. So previously we used calculate WSDL, so you can it is still there. We can use it and do the configuration. Then let's go to the mandatory fields in the receiver adapter. So similarly, I have a receiver SOAP adapter which has connectivity. So all these details you can modify the name for this. This is by default SOAP, and then the connection details is again address is mandatory here, and then this is for like this address is where the outgoing request will be going, right? So where the CI ESB posts the outgoing message, right? Now, and authentication will be the method of authentication the service will be called for. So based on what authentication is available for the configuration that need to be done. Then RM receiver, there is processing. Processing segment, you can either reuse the message ID determination with reuse, generate, and map options. Then we have SOAP 1.x adapter details. We can delete this quickly and use it. SOAP 1.x. So SOAP 1.x configurations are again similar to what we have seen, but this is synchronous call. We have to provide the like it enables to deploy the web services which supports SOAP 1.1 and 1.2 message protocols, right? So using this we can do it, and mandatory parts are address and the user role, where address is basically whatever the URI path you defined here that we have seen in the extensive hands-on only for the SOAP that we created, right? And then we have sender other options like WS security related stuff where we can do the configuration for configuration in the channel and all. Then there is conditions also tab where we can add the message size limit. So maximum message size limit we can define here. And on SOAP 1.x, let me recreate this path where we can add a SOAP 1.x option. And here you see there are X receiver adapter. We have address and authentication method that are mandatory, and address here you need to input the endpoint path. So here you see the endpoint path where the CI ESB posts the outgoing request. Normally the endpoint URL of the web services provider, right? So that you have to provide here. Similar way you have WS security and all the details are present. You can select one of them, like if it is no or based on the policy in the WSDL or something like that. Then moving on to SFTP adapter sender, we have like CI acts as SFTP client, and a SFTP adapter uses the SSH protocol. Okay, let's see here the sources, right? So it uses the SSH protocol and uses the certificate and the key to store for the secure file transfer, right? And here address is mandatory parameter, and host or IP address of that SFTP server will have to be used. And then you have to provide the username for it. Username need to be provided of the sender field. Now, processing, we have all these parameters. You can go through the SAP documentation for each and every parameter here. We will not talk about it. So on high level, just an overview, the read lock strategy, it restricts the file reading operation if the file is in writing mode. So different options are available: none, rename, content change, post processing options are available. So these are all options are there. And then delete file, keep file, and like mark as processed in the like in the repository. Like we can keep it and then again move the file. So all these options are there. So after the post processing is done, what we can do, like we can keep the file, we can move the file, all these options are there. Then talking about the buffer size, the buffer size can be, sorry, I went to, yeah, so buffer size, log level logging options are also available for the runtime polling. The maximum messages per poll, that is also like here you see this 20 and log time for how much time you have to log that file before any other process picks it up for processing. So that are all options are present. And here in the source, you have address and username. Similar way, if I go to just a minute, yeah, so let me select the SFTP receiver part, and here if you see the similar way, address and usernames are mandatory. IP address of the, like, you can provide a name or IP address of the SFTP server and the credentials for it where the file need to be sent, right? So here again we have all these options where we can override, like replace the existing file which is already present, or append it, or all these options are, so we can either override or append or fail or ignore if the file is already present in the target location. And then we have, so let's go to the IDOC adapters. Okay, now let's talk about IDOC adapters, and it is like it enables the message exchange between systems which understand the IDOC with SOAP message protocol, right? So here address is mandatory, like we need to input the endpoint path where CI listens the incoming request, right? So basically like you have to provide the address, authorization, user role, all this are mandatory part, and it uses all these details to get the configuration done. Going forward, we have in the receiver section in the IDOC message, right? So in the receiver part, you have, again, there is general and the connection settings you can do. You can provide the message protocol, IDOC, SOAP, and the transport protocol, HTTP or HTTPS. Adapter type is IDOC, and the receiver you have selected will be then sending the message based on whatever the connection details are provided. Address is mandatory, proxy type is mandatory, and like you can use internet or on-prem, also whatever the IDOC system you have. Let's move on to HTTPS. It's another adapter that we use for sending and receiving part, and from sender it has the address, method, authentication that are mandatory. Address authorization, basically like a user role or the certificate, all those options are provided there. Similar to what we saw in IDOC, it also have a user role, and here you have client certificate, and two options are provided, general details. And then next we have HTTP receiver. So HTTP receiver again have address related input that is mandatory, where we have to provide the endpoint path, and in the connection detail there are methods. You can use all these different types of methods, put, get, all these details that are we usually use for a SOAP call, a SOAP or HTTP calls, right? Authentication, again, client authentication, basic authentication, auth2, all those authentication types are supported here, and this is basically like uses to send the message to the receiver, so whatever is been received. Now moving on to, let's talk about adapter that is heavily used in the cloud platform integration part, which is SuccessFactors. And SuccessFactor adapters, we have to select SuccessFactor here as you see in the sender part, and you have two types of adapters, SOAP and REST. Now let's check what all options are there under SOAP part. In general, we have all the settings, and then under processing you have to provide the address, credentials, all these are mandatory fields, right? And then a similar way you have different like call types also, what type of call it is, and the type, whether it is internet or the on-prem one, right? Moving on to, let's see, okay, just a minute, I think it's stuck, give it a moment. Yeah, so here the entity also we have to provide, where we have to create the query, and to do that here this option is there where we can select the entity, provide all the connection details, username, password, and create a query. So how to do that is basically you have to provide the address details. First of all, if you don't have the connection details, you have to get it from SuccessFactor team, and here these all are different URL that are pre-populated from across regions for all the data centers of SuccessFactor. And a similar way you can select any one of it based on the connectivity you have with your SuccessFactor data center. Once that is selected, credential details has to be provided. Credential name, that is name of the security artifact where the connection details of SF system is deployed. And then there is entity. So entity is basically like where you have, so on the data center, once you get connected with the system details, you can provide that. Call types are synchronous and asynchronous. Query operations, multiple operations are there. Here we can just do a query, basically like if you want to just fetch the data from SuccessFactor. And here system details need to be provided. So if you already have populated it, you can use drop down, or you can provide all these details, address, company ID, username, and the password. And once you do a connect, you have behind, you can see the query editor is there where you can create a query, provide all the functionalities, where you can provide the filtering, and you can add all the details to it and get it done, right? So next, once you provide all these details, SuccessFactor settings are there, and once successfully connected, you can fetch the details and pass it into the steps. for the next steps to be configured, right? Now, entity selection. We have talked about entity selection, but we don't have currently any demo to provide it. Once we actually connect to the SuccessFactors, we can have an extensive demo separately recorded for using how to use the SuccessFactor. And there is a scheduler. Okay, hold on. I think scheduler and all these details are not coming up because the session is expired. So now once we edit it, we will get all the properties and where we saw all the, just hold on. So now let's go to the receiver part. So on the receiver part, similar way, you have to provide all the connection details, credential details, and the processing, you have to provide the query, and all these details are there. So after we have scheduled the data polling, processing, and scheduler, while sending the receiver part, you have to provide all these details again, right? And there are different types of receivers as well. As you see, like once you click on the success factor, you have auth2, that the auth data that we were checking. Now let's click on rest and see what all options are there. So once you click on rest option, there are more details like address, suffix, credential name, all those details are present, and that you can actually see and modify the details based on what the connection parameters are for it. Okay, entity will be the same, like how we have configured it for the sender. Similar way, you have to provide the entity details. Okay, success factor, it fetches the data from it. And now moving on to the different adapters that we have, that we'll just quickly go through. One of that is Ariba, and then OData. So OData is basically like, it is just for the receiver, like what kind of data we can receive through Ariba. You can see the connection details for it. For OData, you can provide the address detail and processing details. Data is enables to connect to the system where we are capable to expose OData services, and OData adapter, we can connect to the different system servers, like perform the query, and like below you see the query options are there once you provide the resource path. So query or update or insert or read, all those options are available. Now you have Ariba related adapters where you can, Ariba is basically like SAP Cloud Platform tenant to Ariba networks. You can directly connect to Ariba networks using this adapter, and using this adapter, SAP and non-SAP cloud applications can send and receive business specific documents in commerce extensible markup language. So this is CXML format is used to transfer the data from SAP Cloud Platform to Ariba, and here Ariba network URL is mandatory that you have to provide once you receive it from the sender. Those details has to be updated. Next, just let's check on to the details of how we actually, so how we can schedule it. Similar way as we did it for success factor, we can schedule here for a recurring time and period, and yeah, that would be it. Now let's move on to the different integrations such as JMS that we have not talked about, a Facebook adapter, or there are a few different kind of adapters that I wanted to cover quickly. So here let's click on the sender and map it with the new adapter for JMS, so that we can talk about it and see what all configuration parameters we have. So once we map it, you get the option to select the adapter, and once you click on JMS adapter for the sender, you have this connection related parameters queue name that has to be enabled. And what it basically does is, so you have to provide the queue details and provide all these details to configure it. Basically, like you have to receive the messages from message queue. Okay, let's see a different receiver, that is, I think, yeah, let's see what is Facebook does. So Facebook adapter receiver, you can have a connection to Facebook posts and like use your user credentials to search through, like in the connection parameters, we'll see there are different kind of methods are there. Okay, let's see, like to extract the information in the connection part, you can provide the application ID, alias, on all this token and everything you have to configure to connect to Facebook services, and like you can, based on the search criteria keywords, like you can get the user data and access the resources on Facebook on behalf of Facebook user. Okay, so it's a just quick overview. And JMS, I wanted to talk more earlier, that we were seeing it, like it enables asynchronous messaging by messaging queues. It sends the adapters, like sender adapter stores the incoming messages permanently and schedules them for processing in a queue. The messages are processed concurrently. Okay, the message adapter stores only simple data types, which includes particular exchange properties, and like not like camel one, it has its own header and body. Now to prevent situation of JMS adapters which tries to like process a large message again and again, you can store a message in a dead letter queue. If it cannot be processed
in 2 retries. So you see in the connection details, you have those parameters, retry interval that can be done, like maximum retry interval for how much time you have to try, and managing the queue cannot be proceed like using monitoring web UI. So here you can manage the messaging queues with the help of your monitoring UI. Now, moving on to let's use a different kind of adapter, that is LDAP adapter. Sorry, I don't think it is there in the sender. So okay, hold on. Yeah, so LDAP adapters are only used for the receiver part, right? So it is not there in the sender list. You see here, it's not mentioned in the sender list anywhere. Now let's delete this Facebook adapter connection. I will just connect it here itself and show you all the options that we have. Similar way we have LDAP and ODC and RFC. So LDAP adapters help you achieve integration scenarios that involve LDAP services, for example, MS Active directory and all that details, right? You can use HANA SAP Cloud Connector to connect to LDAP services through this LDAP adapters, and it supports insert and modify operations. Using the insert operation, you can create new entities, right? So create new entities in the LDAP services, and you can also modify operation to edit the existing entries in the LDAP services. You can perform this operation only one record at a time, and if you want to perform operations on multiple entries, you need to use the splitter step that we have seen earlier. That split of the messages can be used as an individual record to send to LDAP. Okay, so this was all about LDAP and how to use it as a, like while sending it to the LDAP, like in the processing, like, yeah, okay, here are the operations that we talked about. So insert, delete, all those operations you can perform, and input types you have Java and XML, right? So yeah, moving on. So we have other last two adapters to cover today. In few minutes, we can just talk about it. Is basically, okay, hold on. Yeah, here the ODC connection, and ODC connection is basically so it connects SAP Cloud Platform tenant to SAP Gateway OData channel. So through that transport protocol, it uses HTTPS, and you have to provide all this client connection details, and all this detail has to be provided. Okay, now let's delete it, and there is a last adapter for today that is for RFC. So RFC is basically, it is a remote function call and connects SAP Cloud Platform tenant to a remote receiver system using RFC. So RFC is standard interface used for integrating our on-premises ABAP systems to the systems hosted on the cloud using SAP Cloud Connectors. So this is from ABAP to SAP using Cloud Connectors, and it supports SAP NetViewer that are versioning 7.31 or higher. Okay, and again the parameters are the destination, like what messages we have as an input and all. So that's all about it. Okay, thank you guys. Thank you for attending this session, and see you soon. Thank you.